Hey, good morning, friends. This is November 6th on 2022. In some ways, extending my thoughts of the previous video where I introduced the concept of ethnicity, which I think is similar to what CJ on the Comprehensivist project calls a tradition of inquiry and action. Like for me, I have as kind of inventing an anthropology vocabulary. There's the sort of the full cycle of life definition where you get to go on the radar as a full-fledged ethnicity if you have a whole birth to death and everything in between way of dealing with things. Like if all you are is a branch of mathematics or somebody interested in stamp collecting, that might go with your ethnicity, but it wouldn't be a full blown tradition the way I refer to it. So I sometimes am in a namespace collision, I guess, with CJ when he talks about traditions of inquiry and action. He's more like what I say an ethnicity is. It doesn't really matter that we don't talk exactly the same language. That's not required, fortunately. So if you go to Math for Wisdom, here we are in November, early November, and you can find out a lot about what I'm up to and what's been going on in my neck of the woods just by scanning through these posts. Okay, I get into the details about what's going on just with me, right? If that's something you're interested in, and I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying where you can go look it up. And I acknowledge that free lists, because of how it's designed, is going to put ads in your face. I think these big white spaces that you see, actually, a lot of you will see some kind of ad there, and it might be distracting. It might be animated, a GIF of some kind. It's the way it is, right? It's like I have an ad blocker going that's working right now, so I don't see any of that. But I know it's there because I look at the same material through other web browsers that don't have a block. So, what I'm going to talk about, though, here under the heading of ethnicity is how I see the Bucky Fuller stuff that I track and am interested in as a philosophy guy overlapping with various ethnicities out there, and where I learn I have to define my own sort of approach. I was being very admiring of like Native American art from this region, totem poles and so on, Tlingit, this kind of stuff. So I was kind of sketching in sort of where ethnicity fits in, maybe for me. When I show slides of terraforming, I show slides. Let's see, let me get there real quick. Let's see how quick I can get there. Martian math, uh, terraforming. Will that take me right there? No, because that's what everyone wants to do on Mars. I don't think the Martian math will work. But what if I narrow it down to Reed College, which is where I've done two experimental implementations, you could say, of the Martian math idea. What I want to distinguish Martian math from, let's type Reed College, is this interest in propulsion systems and stuff that we don't know about, but maybe some people do. And there's this ethnicity around the UFOs that I associate with Rome, Imperial Rome, going way back, Washington, D.C., same thing. The cult of higher and higher levels of secrecy. There's top secret, and then there's top secret, and then top secret. All this cult of secrecy, we got a good taste of that when they found those files at Mar-a-Lago, and we heard all this talk about how you gotta go in a special room if you want to look at this stuff. You could put lives at risk, all this, right? And Hillary Clinton saying, well, I didn't always go in a special room, but they'd like bring a tent to my office and put it over my head so I could look at them or something. She's trying to cover herself from counterattacks that she was kind of fast and loose like Trump with all this stuff, because it's hard to keep track. All these levels of security. People are very religious about it. There's like a priesthood around levels of security and so on. And I associate that with the cult of UFOs. Now, when I say cult, I mean subculture. It's not really pejorative. I'm in a cult. Quakers are a cult. everything's a cult. And then a little bit, that's kind of like a nickname for subculture. That's how I'm doing it. And that's to be less judgmental. And by the way, I finally came across, maybe not for the first time, these interesting comparisons of Bucky with sort of Renaissance Italian, or not Italian, Flood. We're looking at Robert Flood's Metaphysical, Physical, and Technical History from 1619 in comparison with Bucky Fuller's Synergetics of 1975. And I'm wholly supportive of this kind of research and looking for these kind of parallels and so on, because Fuller is very avowedly being comprehensivist and metaphysical. Like, he is doing this kind of old-timey philosophy, you could say, with a modern twist or two, especially around tetravolumes, which is very usable just as sort of high school level math, which is what I've been showing here. So let me go to that page. What I need to do, now that I've set the stage, is distinguish the Martian math stuff I'm into from, okay, did I find it? Remember I did this search. Yeah, this looks pretty good. I think I can get in here on Wiki Educator. Remember I just started a search a second ago where I was trying to find terraforming in connection with Mars. Look for an example lesson plan. How about an example course? I think we're getting close now, folks. Table of contents. This was at Reed College. Terraforming Earth. So I was talking about the importance of local native cultures, the salmon fishing cultures. Not far from here, there's this place called Celilo Falls that got submerged in this project called the Dalles Dam, which you can see here. Around the time I was born, this happened. 58 or so, they turned it on. And this dam does a lot to power like Google. This area of the world has cheap hydroelectric power. It's been for aluminum plants, and historically, I'm saying, and also now for data farms, big data server operations like Google, like Facebook, like Amazon. All take advantage of this cheap electricity. Anyway, that's my neck of the woods. What I want to do is distance myself, you could say, in my Martian math from all this stuff about UFOs, right? This guy, Greer, big in it. And I agree with him on certain things, by the way. I just watched this interview with him. And he says, hey, if you've got a 0 point energy scheme, like in those Foster Gamble movies, like Thrive and so on, if you think you've got some something like what the UFOs must have to do what they do, to fly around the way they do, this is the thinking they have. We need to save humanity by either declassifying or quickly finding out what it is the UFOs are doing for energy, because we need some of that. And we're not going to survive as a species if we're not up to par with these UFOs in terms of technology and so forth. And I'm agreeing with him that if you do think you have something like that, a 0 point energy scheme, put it out there open source. Don't be signing non-disclosures with people and trying to go out and get venture capital and stuff. Just open source it. If you have something, you will go down in history and super famous, and your fame and glory are guaranteed. Whereas if you sit on it and make it secret, investors are very leery of that now. It's all Theranos as far as they're concerned. It's like, now that we've seen that the smartest cookies on the planet are easily suckered by stuff like that, it's not a culture now where you can just get a lot of money based on vaporware. You've got to come clean up front. And so I'm agreeing with Greer on that point. But what I'm saying is I need to distinguish my Martian math from any search for 0 point energy, or you could say Deus Ex Machina UFO-based sort of rescue solutions for the human predicament. I don't believe that everything hinges on our discovering what the UFOs are doing. Like, and I don't think Bucky was that way either, right? So they do invoke him sometimes. Like, oh, like in Synergetics, we're coming up with 0 point energy. Well, don't be so blasé about that because Fuller doesn't anywhere reference UFOs. I think you can find going through Synergetics dictionary, there is no entry under UFO, and he doesn't really talk about um, that whole set of memes. He's not really telling us to bank on breakthroughs in energy in the future like fusion and so on. He's not saying it's impossible or anything, but what he keeps saying, Bucky, is given the technology even of the 1970s, we have what it takes to take care of people. And, look at how most people don't work. Like if you're in the weapons industry, if you make junkyard weapons like tanks and missiles and stuff, I don't call that work. That's negative work. It's like the burden this planet carries in terms of human carrying capacity. So many people either have negative work jobs or they don't work at all. And that's fine, right? They're retired. They worked hard. They deserve a vacation. I'm not anything against people who don't work. If you're doing negative work, really costing us, well, I have other thoughts. It's like what a lot of waste is going on. I certainly think we know that we could take care of people at a higher living standard just by looking at the waste, right? All the people who do negative work, which is a huge number. It's like, let's start with that. And it gives us hope because, gosh, we could all live really well given how we're doing kind of okay in some ways with so many people not working, in fact, doing negative work. Like one person working at Raytheon is like 10,000 homeless people across the country, right, in terms of negative work. A lot of them would like to work, but if you have a nice cushy job doing negative work, you're not even looking for a real job, right? You're just into building up the junk oblivion stockpile and calling that work and being like proud in some way, going through all the cognitive dissonance work that it takes to justify not teaching this simple, basic, fuller breakthrough math, this geometry to your own kids in your own high schools, right? How do you justify that? How do you go to sleep at night and think of yourself as, quote, a good person? But I don't want to like be super moralizing either because I don't think you really get anywhere by beating people over the head with shit. I just want to separate myself from what I would say is another branch of, quote, Martian math. The people who are really into, we've got to solve this UFO thing before humans can advance. I disagree with Greer on that because I don't think it's worth pinning so much hope on people who so-called have security clearance. I think they're full of it. I think they're BS artists mostly. If you're top security, CIA, and I think you're full of it, mostly. Mostly. I'm not that interested in your war stories. I don't need to come to your house and have dinner. I've done all that as a kid. I know those people. They're not the people I'm counting on, right? So I'm not part of the cult of secrecy in Washington, D.C., where I yearn to be one of those people that, has top security. No, I don't want that. That's bullshit. All right. So just to keep myself separate from some of these other ethnicities that are crowding in sometimes on the Bucky stuff, and I feel it as crowding in, trying to steal credibility because Fuller has very simple math to offer, high school level stuff that we should have all been teaching 40 years ago. He's not sitting on the UFO 0 point energy solution, and that's what we're all like waiting for. No, we're waiting for people to just be honest. High school teachers. That's all. Is it that too much to ask? I don't think so. All right, that's my rant for today. We'll talk to you again very soon.